Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. The New York Times, yes, a mainstream media outlet that we all love, don't we, has decided to put out a hit piece on the detransitioner Chloe Cole. Now, if you don't know who Chloe Cole is, I highly encourage you all to go and read about or listen to her incredible story. It is heartbreaking. It is sad because she wasn't told the truth. And unfortunately, like a lot of people that are subscribing to and believing the lies that are being pushed by a lot of doctors nowadays and a lot of mainstream media outlets and even politicians, is to say to young kids that you were born in the wrong body. And so therefore you need to change your biological construct somehow, which is not even possible. You need to pump yourself full of hormones and you need to get surgery to remove things that are actually supposed to be there that are natural for you. Now, Chloe Cole is an advocate at the moment for people that are choosing to detransition. She's also an advocate for trying to remove this transgenderism nonsense that is going on. And I applaud her. And I'm actually going to be having a conversation with her very, very soon. And I'm very excited for that, to share with you her story, because her story really does matter, as do so many other people that have decided to detransition. And there are reasons as to why people have decided to detransition. You can't ignore that fact. But the New York Times has decided to put out a hit piece on Chloe Cole this morning in America. And we will actually go through what the New York Times did say in this video. But I want to showcase what Chloe said first, because Chloe's voice is significantly more important than the stinking New York Times. But here's what she said. Key and immediate takeaways from the New York Times hit piece this morning. We are gaining significant ground in the discourse. Good. Because why would they need to put out a hit piece to try and discredit or even defame and try and ruin Chloe Cole and her work? What she's trying to do, trying to ruin her story. It's unbelievable. But you know, when people do that, it means that they're actually, Chloe is gaining ground, significant ground, and she's making a big difference. This article represents a departure from many of the narratives the mainstream coverage of the trans kids debate has been pushing in the last year. The live son or dead daughter fallacy is ironically dead. So doctors telling parents, what would you rather, a live son or a dead daughter? It's emotional blackmail. It's indeed, as Chloe said, a fallacy. It's not true. The New York Times fails to juggle narratives in their attempt to undermine the testimonies of detransitioners like herself and several others. And they interview individuals that have stopped treatment due to health complications, but still identify as being trans. So it's not really a truthful look. So these people have decided to stop the transitioning process, but they still identify as being trans. Ridiculous, right? It's only one-sided. So these people are still identifying, but they haven't actually been through treatment. So therefore, you can't really say that they're fully detransitioned at all, because they're still identifying as being trans. Interesting, is it not? As Chloe says, the problem with this is the central argument to allow kids to undergo these treatments is essentially that they will literally die if they do not. These individuals are actually just fine and demonstrate that the rush to transition is unnecessary and potentially dangerous. Well, it is extremely dangerous. Kids are no longer born in the wrong body, as a lot of people say. If detransitioners exist at all, then kids are not, in fact, born in the wrong body. Exactly. The leading cultish dogma is that being trans is inherent to the soul, that there is more external, immeasurable, innate condition that is transgenderism. As we know, transgenderism is this ideology the left has created to push onto kids, to cause confusion, and to basically say you can change your biological sex, which is not actually possible. Detransitioners disprove this entirely. Very well said. Detransitioners represent far more than just regret. We prove that gender dysphoria can be mitigated through addressing underlying comorbid mental health conditions and is not, in fact, innate. I love that last sentence. Absolutely brilliant. said Chloe. And she goes, thank you, New York Times. The New York Times has conceded in the first couple of sentences that surgeries like the double mastectomy that she had at age 15 years old do in fact happen. This is enough for the vast majority of Americans to wince immediately. So all these activists saying that these surgeries are not happening on minors, this is in fact a lie. It is happening. If anyone says, oh, you're a teenager, so therefore you are not necessarily a minor. No, you're still a child. You're still a minor. And even it's debatable, as I've said many, many times, at the age of 18 and 21. Like, can you really say that you are an adult yet if you haven't fully developed properly? If you haven't actually gone through your frontal lobe capacity properly, developing psychological aspects to your overall look of life, can you really say what constitutes an adult in that scenario? But the world just goes, no, you're 18, 21, you're set out into the world. You can do whatever the hell you want. You can do all these adult things. Now, especially go about changing your biological construct or even trying to do that. You can pump yourself up full of drugs. You can do all that sort of stuff at the age of 18 or 21. But now you can do it more so even though you're still a minor. And people say, oh, it's not happening, but it is happening. Chloe goes on and says they have also proved that they are not above writing a hit piece on an 18-year-old trauma survivor if it fits a desired narrative. Again, brilliant. She hit back, and she hit back hard because honestly, a mainstream media outlet attacking somebody's story for detransitioning and saying that this is my story as it is for so many others that are in my position too and are deciding to detransition as well. We need to showcase this more and more, not be silenced, not be attacked by mainstream media outlets to say that this is in fact wrong. Chloe is wrong. She's not wrong. She's totally right. Everything that she is saying is 100% correct. Everything the New York Times is saying is in fact wrong. It's far from being factually accurate. Instead, it is far forward to this mainstream narrative that transgenderism is being so pushed onto kids. They're saying that this whole idea that kids are born in the wrong body, it's unreal, it's unbelievable, and it's sick. And Chloe says any attempted empathy in this article was embarrassing and dull. We're talking about kids getting sterilized. This isn't like picking the wrong ice cream flavor. It's far more serious than that. None of this makes up for the fact that it will never be okay to sterilize, castrate, or mutilate a child for a political ideology. That's what it really comes down to. And I've said many, many times that if you want to change a generation, you educate the kids, or now I'll even add to it, more than educating the kids, you indoctrinate the kids, and then you make them believe a certain ideology that gets them to castrate themselves, that gets them to sterilize themselves. And what are you left with in society? You're left with literally no more generations happening because the vast majority of the population has believed in this lie and has decided to go and ruin their ability to reproduce. It's so, so sick. It really, really is. And that's what destroys societies. It's what happened in past generations. I have you know, look at history. Study history, for goodness sake. It's not hard to find it. But no, we don't listen. We don't read history. We ignore it. In fact, we change history now to suit a modern woke narrative. Chloe ends and says, mainstream media is dead. Then she goes, I've undermined the narrative so much in the last year that the second largest publication in America felt like they needed to put out a hit piece on me. Well done, Chloe Cole. This is what happens when you speak loud, when you shout from the rooftop and you start making waves. People start taking notice. And if they can't shut you up, they put out a hit piece on you. They put out a hit piece on an 18-year-old detransitioner that went through a significant amount of trauma. So what did the New York Times actually say in this hit piece? This is from Maggie Astor, okay? It was written on the 16th of May, 2023, updated 11:02 a.m. ET time, Eastern time. When Missouri lawmakers took up bills to ban transition care for minors, Chloe Cole, an activist from California, traveled to Jefferson City to offer her story as Exhibit A. It's already starting out like, oh, great. After living as a transgender boy for years and getting a vasectomy at 15, Miss Cole says she felt stifled by a male identity and distraught by her body's changes. She decided to detransition, returning to her female identity. No, she decided to return to her actual original female biological construct, not her female identity. This whole idea of identity just gets me up the wrong way. It really does. It frustrates me no end. She also decided to speak out. She has told her story in Florida and in Idaho, Kansas, New Hampshire, Ohio, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Utah. Republican lawmakers typically listen attentively, sometimes in tears. Yes, because if you've listened and if you have a heart, you would know straight away that this should not have happened to a young child. A young 15-year-old should not have actually gotten rid of her healthy breasts. That should not have happened. But it did. So why wouldn't you cry? I cried when I listened to her story because it's sad. But this person doesn't give two craps about any of it. Her language, as she's writing this, there's no empathy. There's no compassion, nothing. But it gets worse. In March, Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida relayed Miss Cole's story in his State of the State address while she received a standing ovation. She deserves a standing ovation because it takes a lot of courage to speak out the way she has. As Republican-controlled state legislatures have passed over a dozen bills banning transition care for minors. Congratulations to them, and many, many more should. This year, and have moved to restrict care for adults. Here we go. Miss Cole and fewer than 10 activists like her, people who transitioned and then changed course, have become the faces of the cause, according to a New York Times review of news coverage and legislative testimony. Here's a picture of Chloe Cole, and I believe next to her is actually Riley Gaines at CPAC. These activists are fixtures at legislative hearings and rallies. Their experiences have been splashed across conservative media as cautionary tales. So again, blaming conservatives for talking about the truth. Meanwhile, the radical left goes, nah, this isn't true. This can't be true. A real person, their story can't be true because it's not mainstream. In Wyoming, a lawmaker named his bill to ban transition care for minors Chloe's Law. Good. Damn right. Most people who transition do not change course. Again, a lie. And yet the influence of these activists has been striking. A lot of people choose to detransition. Why? Because it's not natural. It's not. But of course, we don't like that line of thinking. We don't like that rhetoric being pushed because it goes against the mainstream. It goes against transgenderism. We can't have that. It goes against my identity. Can't have that. Their stories of regret and irreversible physical transformation have tapped into strong emotions about rapidly shifting gender norms, from hardened prejudice to parental worry. Yes, because it is irreversible damage. Haven't you read Abigail Schreier's book and what goes on with these people? You cannot change. You cannot reverse it. You can't fully detransition from all the things that you've actually done to your body, pumping your body full of chemicals and changing the hormonal structure, or even going as far as having surgery. I shared a video the other day of people that have gotten bottom surgery, males that have changed they've cut off their penises and tried to make vaginas, and they were in agony. They're in heartbreak. But of course, they've got actual regrets, but they can't transition back. They can't go back. It's not possible. Lawmakers have used these accounts to override objections from all major medical associations which oppose bans on transition care, as well as testimony from the far larger number of transgender people who say transitioning improved their mental health. Well, again, I've done several videos now showing that a person that decides to transition, their mental health does not improve. There is no scientific evidence to showcase that is actually the case. It's all a lie. It's all this narrative that is being pushed, and all these people that claim that they're identifying as being trans, oh, my mental health. Look at the long-term study. These people have probably transitioned only recently, and the euphoria for them is great. It's astounding because that's what happens. But in long-term studies, when you look at people that have been there for a while, there is significant regret. And all these medical associations, all they care about is a short term. Because you know why? They make a ton of money from the short term. And they try and keep it long term, but they can't actually prove that mental health gets better in the long term. Makes you think, makes you wonder, does it not? These major medical associations are corrupt. And no one should actually listen to them. You can't trust them anymore. These lawmakers are doing the right thing, going above these medical boards. Because what? These medical boards all want to chemically castrate minors. It's sick. And anyone that has a heart and a level of common sense could see that and go, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. They don't really care, said Chelsea Friels, 17, a transgender high school student in Missouri who testified at legislative hearings there to oppose bills that Miss Chloe Cole supported. Miss Friels says hormone therapy helped her or him thrive. He is more comfortable socially and deeply involved on the robotics team. But he says Republican lawmakers look away when he tells them this story. They're on their phones, he said in an interview. The Missouri legislature last week passed a ban on transition care for transgender youth. Thank God. The anti-trans push in America. Here we go. A new mission. The effort to restrict transgender rights has replaced same-sex marriage as an animating issue for social conservatives at a relentless pace. In Missouri, lawmakers passed a bill that would ban transition care for minors. The legislation includes an exemption for people already receiving treatment in Florida, and the list goes on. There's about 16 states now that have banned transition care for minors. And as these lawmakers have said, if you are an adult, then you can do whatever the hell you want with your body, but they're not going to allow minors to transition because it is wrong. As more American teenagers have identified as being transgender, it is difficult to say how many will transition medically. Many transgender people do not. There you go. Now it's just all about the whole identity push. To say that you are trans now is just more about identity than it is actual transition, actually going on hormones. You have people like Dylan Mulvaney, who is looking like he's not even on hormones, and so many others like James Rose saying that there's no one right way of being trans. There's no wrong way of being trans, according to him. So therefore, it must be right. If I say that I'm trans, therefore it must be so. It's a slippery, very slippery slope into hell is what it does. And precisely how many will later change course? Methodology, demographics, and even the definition of detransition vary widely from study to study, which typically show that between 2% and 13% of people detransition, and not always because of regret. Well, show us where you get those studies from. Like, actually tell us the sources, because the sources that I've looked at, and there's several, and you can have a look at the videos, prove that the rates of people actually detransitioning are a lot higher than 2 to 13%. It's a lot higher than that. If you look at the long-term studies, okay, actually ask some detransitioners, and the amount of people, there's thousands of people that are detransitioning. You don't actually hear a lot of their stories. Why? Because they're silenced. A lot of them are silenced, but they're still out there. Leading medical groups in the United States, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association, say transition care should be available to minors and oppose legislative bans. Well, of course, they want to butcher and mutilate kids. That's what we're seeing. They're totally fine with chemically castrating the next generation of kids. Why not? Because it makes them money. They wouldn't be doing this if the surgeries or all the medications only cost them a small amount of money. They wouldn't be doing it. They wouldn't be on board. But these surgeries and these medications cost thousands upon thousands of dollars if you stack it all up. It's unreal, is it not? Follow the money and you'll follow and you'll be led to the actual crime. This is what it is. This crime of ruining kids. Stay away from kids. Many experts say policymakers should ensure access to high-quality care, including thorough individual evaluations to determine which treatments are appropriate at what age. I actually agree with that statement. You should actually have proper care. Not the kind of care that gender-affirming care tries to push. No, that's not care. That's butchery. But actual psychological care with common sense, with reason, rationale, and not trying to push an ideology onto a child. Fix, like try and help that child through psychology. Leaders in the conservative movement say it is important to amplify the voices of people who feel they have been misled by doctors and want to warn others. Agreed. Yes, conservatives should continue to push that. We are glad to work with individuals who are willing to stand up to the corrosive effects of gender ideology, especially when it is being pushed on children, said J.W. Richards. Good on you, Jay, the director of the DeVos Center for Life, Religion and Family at the Heritage Foundation. Let me also say, what is wrong? What is so wrong with conservatives or even Christians standing up for what is actually right, for actually saying, look, we don't want our kids' lives to be ruined. What is so wrong with that? People on the left are so egregiously hell-bent on trying to ruin kids' lives. It is absolutely unbelievable. They're trying to say, let kids transition, let kids change themselves. And they're trying to remove parents from the very equation of being parents. They're trying to raise your children. The state now raises your kids. The government raises your kids. You don't own your children anymore, according to Joe Biden. So is there any wonder why they are pushing this and going so far against what the conservatives are trying to stop? They're trying to save kids. The left is trying to ruin kids. But no, it is all under this guise of gender-affirming care or this ideology that has to do with identity. I mean, stop. But many transgender rights activists and others warn that the outsized emphasis on a minority is distorting the policy debate. They are a significant minority. They're not the majority. Why are we pushing the treatment of trans youth rather than saying what infrastructure needs to be in place to ensure that trans kids are properly evaluated, said Dr. Madeline Deutsch, the president of the United States Professional Association for Transgender Health. This is like saying we have unlicensed drivers on the road, so we need to basically get rid of automobiles. Oh, boy. The loudest voices. Here we go. In March, Chloe Cole helped organize a Detransition Awareness Day rally in Sacramento. She expressed hope that it would be the largest detrans rally ever. About 40 people participated. Well, that's great. 40 people is better than none. And that's still a large amount of people, by the way. And let me just also say this. So trans activists are allowed to have a day of vengeance, Trans Day of Vengeance, but detransitioners are not allowed to have a Detransitioners Awareness Day. Like that's a problem. And then you mock about how only 40 people turned up. I mean, seriously, can you not see that all those 40 people are important? And you say, oh, Jay, what about the people that are in the Trans Day of Vengeance? Well, those people should not be enacting any kind of vengeance. They matter as people, but them actually being in that day and trying to spread hate and trying to spread or incite violence is not important. It's not valuable. Should be stopped. Miss Cole, who did not respond to interview request, is perhaps the best known of the small group of activists who have detransitioned. The list includes Billy Burley, who has testified in at least 6 states, Luca Hine and Prisha Mosley, who have testified in at least 5 each, and Kat Caddison, who has testified in at least 3. Miss Cole and Miss Hine are among the few activists who transitioned as minors, making their testimony particularly potent. When she says few activists who transitioned, well, there are few activists now that have tried to detransition and are speaking out against it, but there's a lot more that are now being transitioned as minors. They often speak in graphic detail about the changes to their bodies and their realization that they may never have children. True. It's correct. What's wrong with saying the truth? I'm far too young to feel like I am a broken woman, but it's hard to look in the mirror, Miss Cole told a Florida House committee in February. Miss Hine did not respond to requests for comment. And honestly, why would you? You know what? It's going to be a hit piece on you. Do you have any comments? Do you have any comments about your story that we're going to turn against you? Do you have any comments about that? Why would you want to say anything? I wouldn't. Run your hit piece. Say whatever you need to say. But I'm not going to make any comment that you can screw up and change to your ideology and your narrative. No thanks. Asked about the group's numbers, 2 other activists, Miss Burley and Miss Caddison, said they believed they represented many people who have not gone public. One person who regrets their transition or has suffered severe damage to her health because it is one too many, Miss Caddison said. But interviews with others who have detransitioned suggest these activist views do not represent the full range of circumstances that drive people to detransition. There are many reasons as to why people decide to detransition, and a lot of it has to do with regret. One, Darius Turilla, 26, said he had detransitioned not because his identity changed, but because of side effects from hormones, uncertainty about taking them indefinitely, and discomfort with being visibly transgender in the South. He is considering transitioning again. Matthew Donovan, 36, a sociology student at Columbia University. Well, we all know about Columbia University, don't we? With Yimini Park, talking about that whole experience with the majority of students having this entitled view on being oppressed. So Matthew said he detransitioned partly because of community rejection and economic insecurity, and partly because he realized it was possible to be non-binary, which felt better, which is why they're using they, them kind of pronouns in that line of sentencing. Goodness me. And Carrie Callahan, 41, who detransitioned about 9 years ago and opposes anti-transgender rights policy, said the politicization of detransitioning had made it harder to improve care. He or she, whatever, I don't know, criticized conservative groups that view his life as grist for their political goals. I feel pretty awful that this has been turned into taking more healthcare away from people. He said this has always been an issue of incomplete healthcare. So that is the hit piece on Chloe Cole and several other detransitioners, but mainly towards Chloe Cole. And everything I read out that Chloe said in the very beginning is completely accurate. It's totally true. There's no compassion. There's no empathy. They're trying to ruin and trying to destroy a young 18-year-old for doing the right thing. And that's all they try and do. They try and screw up an actual story, actual reality, actual people that are trying to stop the madness from occurring even more. But no, you've got these so-called journalists in mainstream media that decide that they own the narrative. And anyone else that tries to speak out against it, they will try and Silence them. Not only silence them, they will put out these hit pieces to try and discredit them. And it is absolutely sick that they would do such a thing. And as Chloe said, the mainstream media is dead. It's gone. No one trusts them. And if you do trust them, you're just as ignorant. Why would you trust mainstream media today that lie through the skin of their teeth about literally everything? They don't tell the truth. And you go, well, Jay, do you share both sides? What's going on? I do. At least I try to. I know people are suffering. I know people out there want to live their life the way they want to live it as adults. When it comes to kids, leave kids alone. So good on you, Chloe. I applaud you. I support you as much as I possibly can. And I want to amplify your voice to the rooftops. I really do. And what the New York Times did to you is unacceptable. But again, it shows just how much of an impact you're making. So keep making an impact. Keep sharing and speaking the truth. Thank you all so much for watching. I know this one was really, really long, but the article was long in this one. So I do appreciate you guys sticking around. You take care. You be blessed. You stay safe. And I'll see you all in the next video.